Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
On 1884, Venn, The Logic of Chance. Introduction. John Venn's The Logic of Chance, published in 1884, constitutes a pivotal contribution to the burgeoning field of probability theory. This book, a meticulous revision and expansion of Venn's earlier work, The Calculus of Probabilities, stands as a significant effort in solidifying the foundations of a subject still grappling with its own character. This essay does not undertake a comprehensive historical treatment of Venn's life, or a survey of the broader intellectual atmosphere surrounding the development of probability in the 19th century, except where directly relevant to the internal claims made within the book. Instead, this analysis will focus directly on a section-by-section evaluation of the logic of chance's central assertions and arguments. The primary task is to dissect the construction, examine the evidence presented for it, and appraise the long-term consequences of the ideas propounded within this volume. The aim is to offer a critical assessment of the logic of chance's core tenets, focusing on the coherence of the arguments themselves, their grounding in observation and reasoning, and their continuing ramifications within, and occasionally beyond, the theoretical underpinnings of probability. Section 1. The nature of probability and its relation to experience. The initial chapters of the logic of chance embark on determining the very essence of probability. Venn carefully dismantles the subjective interpretations of chance that were prevalent at the time, emphasizing the need for an objective foundation rooted in experience. A crucial claim is that probability, for Venn, is not a property of single events, but rather a characteristic of classes or sets of events. Therefore, the probability of a specific event, taken in isolation, is without meaning. It is only meaningful when viewed as a member of a larger, frequently occurring collection. Probability becomes, in this view, a measure of the observed relative frequency of an event's occurrence within a defined class. The author argues that the validity of probabilistic statements rests on observed regularities in the world. Evidence for this position is offered through examples drawn from the natural sciences, such as the consistent occurrence of certain physiological traits in animal breeding experiments. The methodology employed here relies on the accumulation of empirical data, the inference of patterns, and the proposition of the frequency interpretation of probability. A careful scholar might ask if this definition perfectly captures the intuitive sense of uncertainty while examining a single future event, such as the outcome of a coin toss. Although the long-term frequency is calculable, the individual toss retains an inherent ambiguity. Section 2. The scope and limits of the frequency theory. Building upon the foundations laid out in the initial chapters, Venn proceeds to delineate the scope of his chosen frequency interpretation of probability. An important development is the explicit acknowledgement of limits. The author is quick to state that the frequency theory, although offering a solid basis for calculation, does not address all aspects of uncertainty. He states that the frequency interpretation is most applicable when dealing with repeatable events. The author contends that the frequency interpretation functions as a helpful, often accurate description of reality. The examples used include illustrations from actuarial science, where the average lifespan of a class of individuals is used to predict the survival of a similar group. A crucial element involves the concept of the random or chance event. An event is considered random when its occurrence is not correlated with other factors. A key critique arises from the recognition that the observed frequencies are susceptible to variation. If one does not have an infinite number of observations, the relative frequency may not exactly match the true probability. The author provides for this by acknowledging the inherent uncertainty in any probabilistic estimate. The author makes the case that probability is a descriptive tool, never a perfect replica of reality. This is the point on which we must place our greatest consideration. Further Section 3. The principles of calculation. Venn dedicates considerable attention to outlining the mathematical rules necessary to manipulate probabilities. The author explores the principles of addition and multiplication, providing careful explanations of their applications and clearly defining the conditions under which they hold true. A central point emerges here that the rules of probability, like the rules of logic, are not arbitrary, but are derived from the underlying nature of probability itself, namely the frequency interpretation. Venn offers a rigorous approach to probability involving a systematic investigation of the relationships between different events. The method employed consists of establishing the properties of classes and their intersections. The author employs standard mathematical notations such as the intersection of two classes, which in the modern form is written intersect B. The value of the techniques is shown through various examples such as card games and dice rolling, and in more complex cases, the calculation of the probability of combined events. A central assumption becomes that of the existence of well-defined, mutually exclusive events. Problems arise in instances where events are not easily divisible into distinct categories, or where dependencies among the events cannot be readily quantified. Despite these limitations, Venn's contributions to the technical aspects of probability are undeniable. Section 4 Inverse Probabilities and the Limits of Inference. This section moves the discussion towards the more complex realm of inverse probabilities, also known as Bayesian inference. Venn, while recognizing the significance of the work on inverse probability, expresses significant reservations about its applicability. A key assertion is that inferring probabilities from observed outcomes to the conditions that produced them can be problematic. The author points out that inverse probabilities are highly dependent on the prior probabilities assigned to the hypotheses under consideration. Unless these prior probabilities are sufficiently established, conclusions drawn through an inverse method may be unreliable. Venn is particularly cautious about applying inverse probability to scientific inquiry, where the prior probabilities of hypotheses are often difficult to ascertain objectively. The author suggests that the application of inverse probability requires a careful consideration of the evidence and the assumptions. The author emphasizes the importance of evaluating the quality of data to give confidence to the claims. This is further explained by arguing how the conclusions could be influenced by subjective judgments. At stake here is the objectivity of scientific inference. The author's skepticism serves as a caution against the uncritical adoption of probabilistic reasoning. Section 5 The application of probability to statistics and scientific inference. Venn explicitly addresses the application of probability to scientific inquiry and statistical analysis. He emphasizes the role of probability in forming conclusions out the world. Here, Venn advocates the use of probability as a tool for evaluating the significance of empirical findings. The author proposes the use of probability calculations to determine the likelihood of obtaining observed results if the underlying null hypothesis were correct. A key point underscores the distinction between correlation and causation. While statistical methods can illuminate correlations among variables, they cannot directly determine causal links. The author reiterates the importance of careful experimental design and thoughtful interpretation of results. He uses examples from the natural sciences and social sciences to illustrate the application of appropriate statistical methods. The author stresses the importance of understanding the limitations of the data and the assumptions. The argument is that probabilistic methods offer valuable tools for analyzing data and drawing conclusions, but they are never fully detached from substantive knowledge. The scholar must always critically appraise the evidence, the methodology and the implications. Section 6 The theory of errors and its mathematical foundations. Venn engages in an examination of the theory of errors, delving into the origins of the mathematical framework used to analyze the spread of data measurements. He offers a comprehensive overview of the normal distribution, also known as the Gaussian distribution, which serves as the cornerstone of error analysis. A basic claim is that the Gaussian distribution accurately models the frequency with which various values of a variable may occur when multiple independent sources contribute random errors. The author takes the reader through the principles, from the derivation of the normal curve to its important role in understanding measurement uncertainty, then goes on to explain how the mean and standard deviation of a set of measurements can be calculated and interpreted. The author shows how these metrics allow for the development of confidence intervals to estimate the true value of a quantity. Venn's explanation is strengthened by the clear exposition of the underlying assumptions involved. The author concedes that the Gaussian model is not applicable in all circumstances, particularly when measurement errors are not random or when they are subject to systematic biases. This requires careful consideration in any application of the theory of Section 7, the philosophy of probability and its relationship to logic. In this section, Venn delves into the philosophical implications of his frequency interpretation of probability. Venn's central claim is that the study of probability is interconnected with the principles of logic. In a more specific manner, the author argues that the laws of probability are consistent with the laws of logic. Although Venn champions the frequency approach for its analytical precision, he acknowledges that this interpretation is a descriptive tool for the world. The author notes the limitations of the frequency method as a means to resolve singular events. The author suggests that all statements involving probability must be linked to an observed measure of frequency. He argues that the true nature of probability must be based on observable patterns. The author's analysis of probability and logic is supported by many examples of instances in the natural world. The author's efforts to integrate probability within the formal realm of logic serve as a reminder of the intimate relationship between epistemology and methodology. He also cautions against over-reliance on a completely mathematical approach to real-world issues. Section 8, Probability and the Moral Sciences, then turns his attention to the application of probabilistic reasoning within the moral sciences, including economics and social sciences. The author articulates the challenges inherent in applying probabilistic methods to fields characterized by complex human behavior. He argues that the precision afforded by statistical methods can be obscured by the unpredictable nature of human choices. The author uses examples from many areas, showing the difficulty in accurately predicting human behavior. Venn does not reject the usefulness of probability in the moral sciences, rather, he highlights the limitations that must be acknowledged. Venn proposes that moral sciences require a cautious approach to the application of probability. The author suggests that social scientists should recognize the constraints of the data. The author reminds us of the need to assess the moral implications of statistical analysis. Section 9, Paradoxes and Problems of Probability. This section is an exploration of a number of puzzles and challenges that had vexed probability theorists at the time. Venn meticulously examines several notable paradoxes, including Bertrand's paradox and the St. Petersburg paradox, to highlight the complexities inherent in probabilistic reasoning. The author's main idea is to show the potential for errors in the application of probability theory. Venn argues that the ambiguity of these paradoxes arises from the imprecision of the assumptions. A critical point is that the careful specification of the variables involved is essential to avoiding confusion. Venn offers solutions grounded in the frequency interpretation of probability. The author shows how problems can be averted by carefully defining probabilities in terms of observed frequencies. Venn argues that the resolution of the paradoxes lies in a precise understanding of the conditions under which the probabilistic computations are performed. The author's analysis underscores the importance of intellectual rigor in the application of probability. The author illustrates that these paradoxes serve as reminders of the need for caution in both the formulation of problems and the interpretation of results. Section 10. The future of probability. In the concluding chapter, Venn provides a summary of his view on the development of probability theory. The final chapter serves as a testament to the author's foresight. The author correctly predicts the continued importance of probability as a fundamental concept and a means of reasoning in a variety of fields. Venn acknowledges the challenges associated with applying probabilistic reasoning to real-world situations. The author also underscores the evolving nature of scientific inquiry. Venn emphasizes the importance of careful attention to the interpretation of data. The author is clear about the essential nature of probability's reliance on systematic analysis. The author expresses optimism about the future. The author views probability as a vital tool for understanding both the physical and social. Conclusion: the logic of chance remains a landmark achievement in the history of probability theory. John Venn's systematization of the frequency interpretation of probability, set forth in this work, provided a much-needed framework for understanding and applying the principles of chance. Venn's careful attention to the assumptions, methods, and interpretations of probabilistic reasoning has helped in developing a solid foundation for the field. The specific sections, carefully considered here, demonstrate the depth of the book, from the very nature and limits of probability and how it may be applied, all the way to the treatment of paradoxes and scientific inference, through mathematical equations. Venn's focus on observed frequency, the defining characteristic of. However, the work is not without its points of criticism. The focus on external frequencies, while powerful in certain cases, is perhaps limited in its capacity to encompass all facets of uncertainty. Venn's caution concerning the application of inverse probabilities and the moral sciences, while justified in some contexts, has been considered by subsequent scholars as overly restrictive. Moreover, his rejection of subjective interpretations has been challenged by subsequent developments. Nevertheless, The Logic of Chance remains a powerful text. The book exhibits a clear framework, a commitment to scientific rigor, and a remarkable vision of the potential applications of probabilistic reasoning. The influence of the logic of chance can still be seen in various fields, making it a cornerstone in the development of both the theoretical framework and the practical application of probability. In this manner, the long shadow of John Venn helps us appreciate the continuing importance of the logic of chance.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.